In a way, Job and his three friends were severely handicapped intellectuals. When Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar heard of the evil that had befallen him, they made an appointment together to mourn at his side. We quickly read, "When they lifted up their eyes afar off and knew him not, they lifted up their voice and wept." Job 2:12. Despite the universal application of their tears, they did not have the major and minor prophets at their disposal for theological guidance. Our blessed Savior would not arrive in the flesh for another 1,000 years and several added centuries to boot, which would immediately thereafter prompt the warmly welcomed epistles from the apostles. They did not even have Moses and the law to contend with. One might think they were fumbling around, slapping the walls while attempting to flip a light switch in the dark. However, we shan't forget Job's fourth, and dare I call him mysterious, friend. We can deduce that Job's friends wrestled with what truth was made known to them under the umbrella of Abraham's faith, because Elihu is specifically mentioned as having descended from Buz, likely referencing the patriarch's own nephew in Genesis 22:20-21. We see the religion of Abraham coming forward in his promotion of creation. While recognizing God as his maker, Elihu furthermore declares that the Spirit of God breathed life into him, that he is formed out of clay, and chronologically, he is the first in Holy Writ to have described Adam as covering his transgressions. Job also looked to his mediator between God and man in heaven. Job 16:18. He even went so far as to affirm the seed promised first to Adam and Eve and then through Abraham, which would surely result with his own bodily resurrection. To this effect he said, "For I know that my Redeemer lives, and he shall stand at last on the earth. And after my skin is destroyed, this I know, that in my flesh I shall see God, whom I shall see for myself, and my eyes shall behold, and not another. How my heart yearns within me." What makes Elihu, Job, and his three friends so fascinating is that they are not quite unlike us today. Ultimately, they were five guys simply trying to figure it out. And yet God reviled Job's three friends and their three arrogant speeches apiece. They tripped over the booby trap of the ages. They were delusional to believe they could circumnavigate God on their own and figure him out. Or perhaps, by putting their skulls together, they might escape the eternal gullible destined for the most enlightened of seamstresses. For all of our wide-eyed bedazzlements of a technocratic science blueprinted society today, are we any different? Are we any better off in our knowledge than what Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar had to contend with? Aside from the revelations found in God's Word as to the nature of the Creator and his divine plan for the sainthood, have we come any closer to circumnavigating God through natural revelation? I think not. Far from it, ironically. On these grounds, whatever the height of his ascending stage in enlightened history, no man is without excuse. In their specific case, they presumed that God presently punishes evil and rewards righteousness on this side of glory. Essentially, Job's suffering was due to sin, his sin. Eliphaz, who was often thought of as the sensitive friend, accused Job of never really understanding the pain of others while comforting them. Because of Job's sin, he therefore must seek God's favor. The prophet Isaiah, writing of the suffering servant who would later be cut off, may have been directing our attention to the fallacy of Eliphaz, who was the first to critique Job after he cursed the day of his birth and longed for his death. Eliphaz spoke, "Whoever perished, being innocent, or where were the righteous cut off?" Bildad the logical also accused Job of offending God's justice by committing some evil deed. Actually, he surmised that Job's children brought their deaths upon themselves. Zophar, the group's hot-headed member, not only believed Job's anguish was a sign of divine justice, but the punishment he incurred was not enough. By robbing God of his sovereignty and his divine plan, Job's 3 friends spoke ill of him. Only Elihu escaped God's impending rebuke. Actually, the two share a common thread. While Job grew increasingly annoyed at his 3 obstinate friends, he never answered Elihu, just as he wisely kept his mouth shut before the Lord. One might think this is strange, since Elihu, who, much like the unexplained comings and goings of many Old Testament figures, wearing upon himself a cloak of mystery, came to the same conclusions as Job's other 3 friends. Job had sinned, but there is a notable difference. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar held to a judgment that Job was suffering due to a hidden, unknowable digression. Elihu came to a different conclusion entirely. Since the time of his present suffering, Job had sinned. As Christians, as flat earthists, we can learn much from Elihu. He was respectful to those whom he disagreed with, and patient. To this he said, "Behold, I waited for your words. I gave ear to your reasons, while ye searched out what to say." Job 32:11. He was passionate but reasonable. "My words shall be the uprightness of my heart, and my lips shall utter knowledge clearly." Job 33:3. And what attracts me most to his message is that Elihu was inclusive. He implored of Job and those whom sought to cancel him, "Let us choose justice for ourselves. Let us know among ourselves what is good." If Elihu were alive today, he would not merely preach about the evils of this world beyond his reach, solely admonishing the elite or our Luciferian overlords and demanding that others wake up to the self while keeping himself and his friends at arm's length from the very bed we have made and are expected to lie in. If Elihu called Job a sinner, it's because he also was an acknowledged sinner. Elihu's message is of the inclusive nature, and it is for us. I am a sinner. You are a sinner. We are sinners in need of the Redeemer. If our philosophical quandaries lead us down any other road, as we attempt to figure it all out with friends, then we have wasted our breath. To excuse sin is to defend it, and this Job was guilty of. Job eventually confessed to God, "Behold, I am vile. What shall I answer thee? I will lay mine hand upon my mouth. Once I have spoken, but I will not answer, yea, twice, but I will proceed no further." Job 40:4-5. God cleared Job of all charges, but only after he repented. "Wherefore I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes." Job 42:6. Here we find the true message of Job. It is not a dissection of Job's disease or the ash heap he lamented in. When properly administered, Job's narrative asks, no, it requires that God's people fear him and his testimony, even beyond our own intellect. I can't think of a better way to begin the Bible than with a reading of Job. It is with this lens that we can best view Holy Writ, with godly fear, a penitent heart, and humility. We are in no place to school the Lord at any point in history, lest we succumb to the eternally gullible thinker. as if we have a better understanding of the world around us than his own testimony concerning himself, his creation, and the cosmological makeup which he consistently describes throughout the whole of canon. It is no secret, and has long been understood, that Job is a flat earth book. If God were simply fleeing a contextualization of cultural superstition back at Job while crying out for mercy in hellish agony, then the entire point of the book is null and void. We might as well rip it from our Bibles. Indeed, Job and his friends are very much like us today. They were 5 guys faced with wickedness and suffering in light of God's created order. They were simply trying to figure it all out. Though, like Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, I ask this first of myself, and then I ask it of you. How often in our own lives, and more importantly in the lives of others, are we guilty of darkened counsel?
Then the Lord answered Job out of the storm. He said, "Who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me." Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set? Or who laid its cornerstone, while the morning stars sang together, and all the angels shouted for joy? Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment, and I wrapped it in thick darkness? When I fixed limits for it, and set its doors and bars in place? When I said, "This far you may come and no farther. Here is where your proud waves halt." Have you ever given orders to the morning, or shown the dawn its place, that it might take the earth by the edges and shake the wicked out of it? The earth takes shape like clay under a seal. Its features stand out like those of a garment. The wicked are denied their light, and their upraised arm is broken. Have you journeyed to the springs of the sea, or walked in the recesses of the deep? Have the gates of death been shown to you? Have you seen the gates of the shadow of death? Have you comprehended the vast expanses of the earth? Tell me if you know all this. What is the way to the abode of light, and where does darkness reside? Can you take them to their places? Do you know the paths to their dwellings? Surely you know, for you were already born, you've lived so many years. Have you entered the storehouses of the snow, or seen the storehouses of the hail, which I reserve for times of trouble, for days of war and battle? What is the way to the place where the lightning is dispersed, or the place where the east winds are scattered over the earth? Who cuts a channel for the torrents of rain, a path for the thunderstorm, to water a land where no man lives, a desert with no one in it, to satisfy a desolate wasteland and make it sprout with grass? Does the rain have a father? Who fathers the drops of dew? From whose womb comes the ice? Who gives birth to the frost from the heavens, when the waters become hard as stone, when the surface of the deep is frozen? Can you bind the beautiful Pleiades? Can you loose the cords of Orion? Can you bring forth the constellations in their seasons? Or lead out the bear with its cubs? Do you know the laws of the heavens? Can you set up God's dominion over the earth? Can you raise your voice to the clouds and cover yourself with a flood of water? Do you send the lightning bolts on their way? Do they report to you, "Here we are"? Who endowed the heart with wisdom, or gave understanding to the mind? Who has the wisdom to count the clouds? Who can tip over the water jars of the heavens when the dust becomes hard and the clods of earth stick together?